Joseph was the son of Jacob, also known as Israel, and he was his father's favorite son. This favoritism was evident when Jacob gave Joseph a richly ornamented robe, also known as the coat of many colors. This made his brothers jealous and angry. To make matters worse, Joseph had two dreams that suggested he would one day rule over his family. In one dream, he saw sheaves of grain bowing down to his sheaf, and in another, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down to him. When he told these dreams to his brothers and father, his brothers hated him even more. One day, Joseph's brothers were tending their father's flocks near Shechem, and Jacob sent Joseph to check on them. When the brothers saw Joseph approaching, they plotted to kill him out of jealousy. However, Reuben, the eldest brother, persuaded them not to shed blood. Instead, they threw Joseph into a dry cistern, intending to leave him there to die. Reuben secretly planned to rescue Joseph later and return him to their father. While Reuben was away, a caravan of Ishmaelite traders passed by, and Judah, another of Joseph's brothers, suggested they sell Joseph to the traders instead of killing him. The brothers agreed, and they sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver. The traders took Joseph to Egypt. To cover up their crime, the brothers dipped Joseph's beautiful robe in goat's blood and brought it to their father. Jacob recognized the robe and assumed a wild animal had killed Joseph. He was devastated and mourned for his son for many days, refusing to be comforted. Joseph in Egypt. Meanwhile in Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials and the captain of the guard. Despite being a slave, Joseph prospered because God was with him. Potiphar noticed Joseph's success and put him in charge of his entire household. However, Potiphar's wife falsely accused Joseph of trying to seduce her, and he was thrown into prison. Even in prison, God was with Joseph, and he quickly gained the trust of the prison warden. Joseph was put in charge of the other prisoners, and again, everything he did prospered. Joseph's rise to power. 2 years later, Pharaoh had troubling dreams that none of his wise men could interpret. The chief cupbearer, who had been in prison with Joseph, remembered that Joseph had accurately interpreted his own dream and the dream of the chief baker while in prison. Pharaoh summoned Joseph, who, with God's help, interpreted Pharaoh's dreams as a prophecy of 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of severe famine in Egypt. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom, Pharaoh appointed him as the second most powerful man in Egypt, in charge of preparing the nation for the coming famine. Joseph stored up vast quantities of grain during the 7 years of abundance. When the famine struck, it affected not only Egypt but also the surrounding regions, including Canaan, where Joseph's family lived. Jacob sent his sons, except Benjamin, to Egypt to buy grain. When they arrived, they did not recognize Joseph, who was now dressed as an Egyptian ruler. However, Joseph recognized them. He decided to test his brothers to see if they had changed. He accused them of being spies and imprisoned them for 3 days. Then he released them, keeping Simeon as a hostage, and sent the others back with grain, instructing them to return with their youngest brother, Benjamin. When the brothers returned with Benjamin, Joseph hosted a feast for them. He then devised another test. He had his silver cup hidden in Benjamin's sack. When the cup was discovered, Joseph accused Benjamin of theft and said he would keep him as a slave. This was a final test to see how the brothers would react. Judah, who had earlier suggested selling Joseph, now offered to stay as a slave in place of Benjamin, showing how much he had changed. Joseph reveals his identity. Overwhelmed by their repentance, Joseph could no longer keep his identity hidden. He wept and revealed himself to his brothers. "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" he asked. The brothers were terrified, thinking Joseph might seek revenge. But Joseph reassured them, saying, "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life." He explained that God had turned their evil actions into good, using him to save many people from the famine.